You open your eyes not because an alarm went off, but because your body has decided it's time. You've recovered, rested, and it's giving you the signal. No schedule, no to-do list, no place you have to rush to at any cost. You just lie there for another minute or two, stretch, and savor the pleasant thought. What could I do today? For 99% of human history, roughly 300,000 years, this wasn't a deep philosophical question. It was completely ordinary. The modern person spends about 90,000 hours at work. That's nearly a third of the life we live while awake. Yet for almost our entire history as a species, work as we know it, with salaries, bosses, reports, and career ladders, simply didn't exist. So what did people fill their days with? Let's look at the facts, the ones we can check both today and through the physical traces of the past. In the 1960s, anthropologist Richard Lee went to the Kalahari Desert and began counting literally every hour of the Jew/Hawansi bushmen's lives. They hunted and gathered mongongo nuts and other gifts of the desert. Getting food took them on average 15 to 20 hours a week. The rest of the time was entirely theirs. In 1966, Marshall Solins, drawing on this data, called these societies the original affluent societies. Not because they had many things, but because their needs were modest and easily met. Researchers saw the same pattern among the Hadza in Tanzania, studied by Frank Marlowe, the Aceh in Paraguay, and the Martu in Australia. Different continents, different climates, the same result: 15 to 20 hours a week to provide for themselves. Most modern people work roughly twice as much. Someone might object, but these are modern hunter-gatherers. How do we know what it was like for ancient people? A fair question. The answer comes from bones. Archaeologists compared the skeletons of hunter-gatherers and early farmers. The farmers were shorter, their teeth full of cavities from constant porridge and grain. Their spines showed signs of arthritis and wear from repetitive movements, and on average, they lived shorter lives. Hunter-gatherer skeletons were taller, bones stronger, teeth healthier. The bodies themselves tell us clearly. Heavy, monotonous, exhausting labor was far less common. But there's even more unexpected proof. If every moment had to be spent just staying alive, where would art and symbols come from? In 1994, the Chauvet Cave was discovered in France. The paintings inside are about 36,000 years old. Horses, lions, rhinos, depicted with astonishing movement, perspective, and even volume. Someone spent long hours in the dark by torchlight creating this, not for food, but for beauty and meaning. In Blombos Cave in South Africa, researchers found shell beads about 75,000 years old, an ancient ochre processing workshop, and a piece of ochre with the earliest known geometric pattern scratched into it: diamonds. This is the oldest abstract drawing we know of made by a human. And in Hohlfels Cave in Germany, there's a bone flute made from a griffin vulture bone with several precisely placed holes, about 40,000 years old. Whoever carved it clearly understood how to produce different notes. Finds like these, ornaments, musical instruments, complex images, appear from Europe to Africa and beyond. They took hours of work with no direct survival benefit. Let's reconstruct what an ordinary day might have looked like. You wake at dawn or a little later, whenever you've had enough sleep. Yesterday's fire is still smoldering. Someone adds dry branches. Breakfast is shared. Leftover meat, a handful of nuts or sweet roots. People sit together, chatting lazily, making loose plans. A small group might head out to hunt or gather plants, but not every day. If they brought back enough yesterday, they can stay in camp. Then you work on useful things, repairing a spear or bow, weaving a basket, tanning a hide. No clock, no supervisor standing over you. You do it because a well-made thing is valued, and skill earns respect in the group. If a hunt does happen, it's not the frantic chase you see in movies. People rely on endurance. They follow an animal at a steady jog for hours. Humans sweat well and shed heat while moving, while large prey overheats and eventually collapses.
The whole hunt and return usually takes 3 to 6 hours. The carcass is brought back to camp and divided among everyone. Food is shared. By midday, the main tasks are done. Then comes what we find hardest to understand today. People simply rest in the shade, talk, play with the children, groom each other's hair, It's both hygiene and a powerful way to strengthen bonds. Make beads, carve patterns into bone, nap. Anthropologist James Sussman, who lived for a long time among the Jew/Hawanzi, calculated that about 6 hours a day went purely to social interaction, conversations, laughter, jokes. Not work, not sleep. In a world without money, police, or formal contracts, survival depended on relationships. If people value and like you, they'll share food with you on a hungry day. So they invested generously in friendship and trust. When the sun sets, the most interesting part begins. In 2014, Polly Wiesner analyzed hundreds of hours of recorded Jew/Hawanzi conversations.
During the day, people mostly talked about practical matters: whose tracks they saw, which fruits were ripe, who had or hadn't shared fairly. But at night, by the fire, 81% of longer conversations turned into stories. Myths about the beginning of the world, ancestors' adventures, funny incidents from the lives of people they knew, tales of distant travels. Wiesner believed it was around these night fires that culture was born and passed on. Ideas about spirits and gods, about the past and future, about how the world works and how to live in it. What does a full belly and safety have to think about? People didn't sleep the way we're used to. Historian Roger Eckertz, studying old European records from before electric light, found a curious detail. Sleep was usually split into two parts. A first sleep of about 4 hours, then 1 to 2 hours of wakefulness in the dark, then a second sleep of another 4 hours. In the 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Ware confirmed this in an experiment. When artificial light is removed, the body naturally reverts to segmented sleep. In those hours between sleeps, people in the past often just lay there thinking, had quiet conversations, or did something calm. A full day looked roughly like this: 4 to 6 hours getting food and making tools, about 6 hours on socializing, stories and games, 8 hours of sleep in 2 phases, and still time just to exist. Sitting, watching the clouds, listening to the wind, being, without having to justify every minute with activity. Then, around 12,000 years ago, things began to shift in the Near East, in the Fertile Crescent. People started planting the first seeds. But even earlier, about 11,600 years ago in the same region, Göbekli Tepe appeared, a huge stone complex with massive pillars carved with animal reliefs. It was built by hunter-gatherers, most likely as a ritual center where people from the surrounding area gathered.
This shows that complex social organization and large projects were possible even before agriculture. Only afterward did farming become a trap. You could feed more people. More people required more food. More food required more fields. Within a few generations, the population exploded, and there was no going back. Too many mouths for hunting and gathering, while fields demanded far more labor. Plowing, sowing, weeding, harvesting, storing, guarding against animals and neighbors. The bones of the first farmers speak plainly. They worked harder and lived shorter lives. Biologist Jared Diamond called the transition to agriculture humanity's worst mistake. But the surplus allowed specialists to appear. Potters, weavers, craftsmen, later warriors, priests, officials, and finally, work as an obligation. Your time now belonged to the system in exchange for food. By the time cities emerged, the old way of life had almost disappeared.
It was replaced by schedules, debts, and the need to work most of the day. Today, you give the same 90,000 hours to work. Your ancestors spent far less time just staying alive. You sleep in one unbroken block and call waking up in the middle of the night insomnia. They slept in 2 phases and used the time between them for quiet reflection. You often chase success defined by other people's standards. They woke up already free. What they had was enough. They didn't need to become successful. They were already living that life. The very existence many people today work toward for retirement was their everyday reality. You make time for creativity and art after work, if there's any left. They created because time for it was built into life. We are the same biological species, but we live completely differently from 99% of our history. We traded a significant part of freedom and leisure for guaranteed food, rapid population growth, and complex technologies. For 300,000 years, people woke up without an alarm. We were the first to invent one and make it the norm. Those people left marks on cave walls, Drawings, patterns, flutes. You can leave your own mark too. If this story made you see time, work, and what really matters in a different light, subscribe to the channel. There's more to come. See you by the next fire.